Wayne joins us now. Mr. Larrivee, how are you, sir? Big fan of yours, and thanks so much for the time.
Absolutely.
Well, great to be with you guys. How you doing?
Doing fantastic.
Doing
And again, it still feels pretty new for us to have a pretty decent football team in Detroit. I know it's been a couple of years now, but still to have the Lions and Packers play for first place, this just feels right. We believe the Lions are the best team in the NFL here. How do you view the Detroit Lions? And from a 30,000 view, what do you make of this football team this year?
I think they're playing the best of anybody in the league right now. They have been really impressive in their last 4 or 5 games, in my opinion. I've watched the last 3, and the way they just there's so many ways they can beat you, and especially on the offensive side, but also on special teams. And I don't think they get enough credit for how good they've been on teams over the last several years. Hey, listen, they do a great job to scheme it up and everything else. Dave Flip has done an outstanding job with that group. But when I look at the overall numbers, defensive adjusted value over average, which I think gives you a pretty good picture of how a team is playing, the Detroit special teams are number 1. And matter of fact, the Lions overall are number 1. And number 1 by an extremely wide margin. I understand Kansas City is undefeated. Quite frankly, they're not playing that well right now. The Lions are, and yet they've had an incredible amount of injuries. They've got 14 people on injured reserve. 10 of them are defensive players. 5 of them are starters, and 7 of them would have been playing in the defensive rotations. So this is a tremendous credit to the depth they built on this football team.
Wayne, always good to talk to you. Braylon always here, man. I remember last time we talked to you, we were talking about Jamal Williams coming here and how much he was going to be missed by Green Bay, and you were absolutely correct. What is it about these guys in Green Bay? They come here and they find a home. I'm talking about Malik Willis. Malik Willis comes to Green Bay. A lot of people wasn't even sure about him being a quarterback in this league, and he's had nothing but success. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback on this coming Sunday, but Malik Willis, if he's a quarterback, seems like he's confident in Matt LaFleur. What is it about Malik that Matt LaFleur they have that seems to be a relationship, a working relationship, if you will?
Well, the thing about Malik, with the front office, the pro personnel side of the front office, they do all the scouting during the summer and during preseason, and they felt Malik Willis had made a step forward in his development as an NFL quarterback. He's going into his 3rd year. He was a 3rd-round draft choice, obviously wasn't ready to play, played a little bit as a rookie and didn't get to play a whole lot last year. But they noticed that he was starting to do some of the things that pro quarterbacks are able to do. So at the end of preseason, they had 2 quarterbacks they had drafted and were trying to develop as backups to Jordan Love. Neither player set the world on fire during the preseason. Brian Gutekunst made the bold move of cutting them both. And so for a few hours, the Packers are sitting there. We don't have a backup quarterback here now. And then he went to Tennessee, sent a 7th-round draft pick down to Tennessee for Malik Willis. And the thing that impressed the Packers the most, and they knew this going in, he scored a 32 on the Wonderlic, okay, coming out of college. So he's a smart guy, okay? He has, he can comprehend things. But what's impressed the coaching staff here was how quickly he picked up the system. Within 10 days of him being in Green Bay, when they went to Brazil, he was the backup quarterback, not Sean Clifford, who had been on the team all of last year. So it was interesting in that regard. And then Jordan Love goes down with an injury. Now it's Malik Willis for the next 2 weeks. And they handled him with kid gloves. They allowed him to do what he could do, and they expanded that the following week, and they won 2 games. And then last week he came in, and I thought just the way the play calling was handled with Malik in the lineup, that was a little bit different than when Jordan's in there. They did a great job of, matriculating another win, because Willis had to get that game done. He had to win that game down the stretch.
Yeah, he definitely had to win that game down the stretch, man, and kudos to Willis for being able to get it done. You talk about the wide receivers for the Green Bay Packers. It just seems like my whole lifetime, the wide receivers of the Green Bay Packers have always been substantial, whether you want to go back to Robert Brooks or Sterling Sharp, or whether you want to come now to Jaden Reed and Romeo Dobbs. What is it about the scouting department as it relates to the wide receiver position? Because it's one that they are always truly blessed, the wide receiver position. They never go more than a year without having a group of guys that can make it happen. I mean, even when I was in the league, it was like, dang, I got to compete against Greg Jennings, Donald Driver, Jordy Nelson. It's always some receivers in Green Bay.
Yeah, they've had great luck, especially in the second round with wide receivers. People have criticized them for not drafting a wide receiver in the first round. Well, when you're as productive as they are in the second round with these receivers, Romeo Doubs, second-round pick, Jaden Reed, who's probably the best receiver they have, second-round pick, Christian Watson, second-round pick. He's just scratching the surface. The quarterback instability due to injury this year has kind of skewed things as far as receivers emerging and putting up big numbers, but they've got a bunch of them. They're going to go too deep at all three of those receiver positions. And then you throw in Tucker Kraft, and he's starting to look like that tight end out in San Francisco. He's a complete tight end player, but he's a guy who's just a rugged runner when he has the football in his hands, and he does it all. And he's an emerging talent, much like Sam Laporta was for Detroit a year ago.
Wayne, when I was growing up in the 70s, the NFC Central was like Minnesota, and that was it. The rest of them were the dregs of the league. And now you look at this division, the new NFC North, and it's second to none now. I haven't seen a turnaround of a division like this in my entire football life. What do you take for these four teams going forward?
Well, it's funny. I've been around this division since 1985, my first year in Chicago with the Bears. And I've never seen this division, top to bottom, top to bottom, this good. I don't know if there's anybody of the ilk of the 85 Bears in it, but there doesn't have to be. Teams aren't that good these days. You don't have to be that good to win it all. In terms of the way it used to be. You used to have you had to have a super team to win it all back in the 70s and 60s and 80s, that kind of thing. But it's really interesting because they're all good. Chicago should have won that game at Washington. That was as fluky a situation as you're ever going to come across. But they're good. These teams are just really good. And we've had, 2 division games so far, right?
That's it.
We're almost halfway through the season. We've only had – this is going to be the 3rd division game. That's it so far. It's going to be a bloodbath down the stretch, that's for sure.
If you had to rank the teams right now, the whole league, what would be your top 5 right now, 1 to 5?
Oh, boy, whole league. Gosh, I wish I had a standings in front of me. But here's what I would say. Detroit, number 1. Kansas City, number 2. Probably Baltimore, number 3.
I'm right with you.
And
right
then
now.
from there, I'm sorry?
I said I'm right with you so far. I'm right with you.
Yeah, I mean, and Baltimore's flawed. Their defenses are very good. And I think Lamar Jackson will cough it up when it really counts. At least that's what he's always done. So, beyond that, then you get to that next tier of teams, and it's a little harder to make a distinction. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Give me a team. Who's on your list? Who is on your list?
I'd have the Packers right there at number 4, and number 5 right. And number 5, I'd put Washington right now. The way I'm looking at them, I think the Rams. I don't think the Rams are out of it. To tell you the truth, I don't think the Rams are out of this thing.
I would have put Minnesota up higher. I would have probably had Minnesota 4, maybe Green Bay 5. Washington in the discussion, but not top 5. I don't believe in them yet. Boy, and then you go from there, and it's going to be an interesting year. And here's the thing, guys. If you're super today, the only thing I'd be worried about as a Lions fan today is we're playing too good. Because there's no way in 2 months when you want to be playing this good, in January I'm talking about, you're going to be playing this good. There's just no way. I mean, hey, it was San Francisco's year last year, right?
Yep.
When they had a 3-game losing streak, came back, they were gangbusters, right? For about 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. Then they started to fall off a little bit. They lost the last game to the Rams or something like that. Anyway, they kind of fell off. And then in January, they weren't playing very well. And it was this is their year. They got everybody, and they no injuries, all this other stuff. Shanahan's going to win the Super Bowl, right? The Packers could have beaten them. The Lions should have beaten them. And then they go to the Super Bowl. They're leading Kansas City. They can't pull away because that defense is too good at KC. Somehow Kansas City gets the game tied and it sends it to overtime. And you know what happens at overtime when Patrick Mahomes is on the other team, right? You don't have to watch that. You know what's going to happen. And that's what happened to San Francisco. So look where they are now. We don't even have them in the top 5. I know they're injured and beat up and everything, but you know what? The whole discussion on them in the preseason was everybody holding out. That team is not focused the way it was last year. Now, they play in a terrible division, and someone will have to deal with them in January. But trust me, they're not the team they were a year ago.
And that's why, Wayne, you're exactly right. But that's why we here in Detroit are sitting here saying, okay, in a go for it year, just because you're good this year doesn't mean you're going to be good next year. Just because you have a chance to win the Super Bowl this year doesn't mean that same opportunity is going to be afforded next year. That is why we are desperate for a trade, something big, a Myles Garrett, a Max Crosby here in Detroit. Is Green Bay looking for help elsewhere? The trade deadline is coming up on Tuesday. That's obviously, I look at Detroit and Green Bay as the two best teams in the NFC. To hell with Kansas City and Baltimore on the other side. It's going to be Detroit and Green Bay, in my opinion, when it's all said and done in January. Are they looking for help over the next 5 days?
Yeah, I can tell you for sure they're looking, but they don't feel as compelled perhaps to make a move as the Lions do. Zadarius Smith is a name I keep hearing coming up with the Detroit Lions, and it'll be interesting to see if they can. They really need to get the Packers are the same way, but the Packers feel they've got good young people on that defensive line that hopefully will eventually find their way to the quarterback. But if there's a weakness for the Packers defensively, they haven't gotten enough pass rush pressure from their 4-man down line. They've had to resort to more blitzing without Hutchison and Barnes and Detroit just hasn't been able to generate as much pressure with their 4-man down line as they'd like. So if they could get a Zadarius Smith in there, I think that would change everything. I think that would do for them what the kid that Chicago got from Washington did a year ago for them.
Yeah, Montez Sweat.
Yeah.
It is. That's excellent point, Wayne. Last one from me here as far as Aaron Rodgers goes. You've covered Aaron Rodgers basically his whole career. To see him now, what is your take on him going forward and the Jets' mess?
It's a dumpster fire. For a while, he had the fire under control a little bit, but the Jets are a dumpster fire. I mean, it's going to take more than one guy to turn that thing around. They went out and got Devontae Adams. That's great for the offense, but it didn't help the offensive line, and that's really where they're having trouble, in my opinion. So, I don't know what to tell you except that it just doesn't look good. They don't look good on offense. Aaron is not the player he was 3 years ago when he was an MVP. It's sad to say, but 40 has a way of catching up with you.
Unless you're Tom Brady. Hey, Wayne, does last one, and thanks so much for the time. Does Jordan Love play this week?
I'm just guessing, and I don't know if he's going to practice. I don't think he's practicing these first 2 days. I think he will. I just think somehow he'll will himself into that game. What they have to determine as a coaching staff and as an organization is, hey, listen, do we want to give him a week off here? We got a bye week coming up. Get him healthy down the stretch, regardless of who wins this football game Sunday in Lambeau Field. There's a hell of a lot more ball game left. I could see an argument that way that might happen. It might be happening right now behind closed doors. Who knows?
We hope that decision is made like that. Give him 2 weeks off.
Give him 2 weeks.
Give him 2 weeks off. Go ahead,
Wait. Hey, Wayne, that's coming from the two guys that wanted the Lions to draft Malik Willis 3 years ago.
Hey, we love Malik. We love Malik.
We got laughed off. We still get laughed at.
At two overall.
Yes.
hey, listen, when it comes to Malik Willis and you guys in your argument, just point to the passer rating. It's like 130.3.
Yes,
exactly.
Thank you.
You know what, Wayne? I'll tell you, and Matt LaFleur doesn't get enough credit.
Oh.
It's not, where you go matters. Look at Sam Darnold with Kevin O'Connell. Where you go matters. I'm a firm believer. It's everything. It can be everything to a player.
In O'Connor, in Matt LaFleur, you're talking about two guys exactly. Those are two of the best offensive minds. The guy in Detroit is really good, obviously. But, Jared Goff goes to a situation, gets into an offense with Ben Johnson that fits him. And no, by the way, not just fits him, but they actually believe in the guy. And that's why he's taken off. That's why today he's the best quarterback in the league. You know that, right? I mean, Lamar may be the best dual threat quarterback, but Jared Goff is playing better than anybody in the league and better than anybody's played in quite some time, maybe since back to the Aaron Rodgers heyday.
Wow.
No doubt about it. We appreciate it, Wayne.
Thanks,
we can't
Wayne.
thank you enough. We'll listen to you call a game any day,
All
my
day
friend.
long.
One of the
All day
best to
long.
do
All right,
it.
guys.
We appreciate it.
Thanks,
Wayne
Wayne.
Larrivee here
Well, appreciate
on
you.
Woodward Sports.
Take care, guys.
Take care.
Longtime radio voice of the Packers. Enjoy the game this
Bears
weekend.
before that.
Absolutely. It started with 85 Bears.
Yep.